See, I woke up in the middle of the night last night and I said, what could go wrong with life? And the answer was sound coming out of my computer, even though we went over it and checked it all. So please forgive me. Should I try it? Seductive, huh? Yeah, that's what I said. But think about what you're clapping for. Walter Benjamin said fascism is the aestheticizing of politics. Arguably, politics is also aestheticized in democracies and under other forms of government. But this talk, based on my forthcoming book, Iron Fists, Branding the 20th Century Totalitarian State, is not about the Bush administration's failed attempts to brand the American way of life in the Middle East, but rather how 4 20th century regimes used graphics to capture hearts and minds. During the 20th century, despots, not unlike corporate executives today, established convincing narratives supported by graphic identities, logos, and trademarks, things that you all make. These graphics triggered instantaneous recognition among the public for their ideas and products. And media-savvy rulers believed this would ensure brand loyalty, the ultimate objective of every branding strategy. They created images based on charismatic characters, not unlike trade characters used to sell everything from detergent, to snack foods, to headache remedies, to fast food. Comparing how corporations and totalitarian states are marketed may seem harsh. After all, a popular brand of frozen food or laundry detergent is not forced down the consumer's throat with an iron fist. Still, the design and marketing methods used to sell doctrine and those aimed to guarantee consumption are fundamentally similar. Today, I'll talk about 4 20th century totalitarian regimes: Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, Soviet Russia, and Communist China. Their creative use of branding was exemplary. First, however, let's look at the image of the ideological trade character, which I call the cult of the leader. We'll start with El Duce, Benito Mussolini. Mussolini was the art dictator of the fascist style. He was also its most ubiquitous symbol. When he came to power in 1922, he exchanged the old national symbols of Italy for new fascist icons. Most notably, his own omnipresent lockjawed visage, rendered in painting, stone, and stencils. Policy also demanded that the word duce, or duke, or boss, be used everywhere, spelled in Roman capitals as a typographic chant. Duce, duce. He was also quite the fashion plate, and dressed in different styled uniforms at every chance. Like an actor in a play, these uniforms were really costumes. Referencing ancient Rome, busts of Duce were as common as the Caesars. In this early sculpture, his raised chin is exaggerated to imply power and majesty. In this bust, his forward brow makes him look like a Klingon from Star Trek. Italians were unable to escape his searing gaze, or his virility. Duce saw himself as a great coxman. You probably all know who this is. Adolf Hitler was a living logo in every sense. Sign, symbol, figurehead, mnemonic, aide de memoire, and even mascot. He was deliberately designed, not to resemble the typical German aristocrat or bureaucrat, but rather the proverbial big brother, the savior of the German race. This 1932 election poster is so minimalist that it could easily be modernist. A hypnotic gaze, the forerunner of the 1984 Big Brother image, focused on the viewer. It had a simple caption headline, Hitler. The only typographical tick was a seemingly superfluous square over the I in the name, but perhaps it was a visual pun on his famously cropped mustache. Hitler was never shy before the camera. Incidentally, his personal photographer Heinrich Hoffmann profitably continued for 2 decades to help shape Hitler's image through the production of portraits, postcards, portfolios, and books sold at his retail atelier in Munich, and Hitler got a slice of that action. And Arno Breker, Hitler's favorite sculptor, made a small fortune producing busts which were placed in every official office building. Minister of Information Joseph Goebbels oversaw the myth of the infallible Führer, who was strong as iron but kind to children. In fact, Heinrich Hoffmann devoted 2 pages of his retail catalog of photographs to the leader petting dogs, pinching cheeks of young boys, and accepting flowers from young maidens, in addition to the official portraits shown here. The goal of the photos, paintings, posters, and these postage stamps was to ensure that his followers maintained intimate identification with their leader as a real brand. By the way, the Führer received a royalty of 1 pfennig every time one of these stamps was purchased. Many of you know the posters of Ludwig Holbein. His work was key to propagating the Hitler myth. It was clear to the public relations savvy Nazis that for Gleichschaltung, and I'm pronouncing that poorly, the standardization of Nazi doctrine throughout society, to succeed, it was necessary to micromanage public opinion. Goebbels was the National Minister of Propaganda and Enlightenment, which was known as the Promi, and it was organized into 7 divisions that covered a broad range of social communications and cultural concerns, including stage managing and maintaining the brand. Let's turn to Mao. He was the chairman or the great helmsman. Mao's face and words were everywhere. He was the principal trademark of the Cultural Revolution. The Maoist brand was perpetuated in every corner of China and eventually etched on revolutionary movements throughout the Third World. I call this the chocolate Mao. The cult of Mao was a cult of personality. It was also a coordinated propaganda effort by Mao's stalwarts to revivify his mythic stature as the great leader, largely conceived to return him to absolute power in his sphere and aggrandize those who sided with him. His myth was built upon his early years as a revolutionary, and though he evolved into the Buddha-like image we know and love, much was made of his youthful demeanor. The Cultural Revolution was ostensibly triggered by Mao's realization that he relinquished power too soon. Mao had cultivated a super-ego that enabled him to deny his own failings and led him to find new means to restore his iron-fisted rule of China. Many images portrayed him as just one of the people, the ping-pong player par excellence, for example. Mao regained his power and his stature at the outset of the great proletarian Cultural Revolution, when he commanded impressionable minions to bombard the headquarters or attack existing party and government structures, and thus purge and humiliate high-ranking officials. When hordes of young Chinese wearing red armbands converged on Beijing's Tiananmen Square on August 18th,